Namaste dear children, I am Rekha. Welcome to my channel Rekha's Knowledge Hub. Today we will see NCERT Classic Science Chapter 10 Living Creatures Exploring Their Characteristics Part 1. Avadi and Ayush go for a morning walk with their parents. Avadi notices some shells and tries to pick them up. Her mother advises her not to do so and explains that the shell could be home to a living snail and is actually a part of its body. Avadi and Ayush wonder how the shell that is not even moving could have a living being inside. So Avadi and Ayush, they went for a morning walk with their parents. Then Avadi noticed some shells and she tried to pick them up. Their mother said it was part of a living snail. Then Avadi and Ayush were surprised. How can something that doesn't move be alive? They asked. Then mother said, even though the shell itself is not moving, it's a part of the snail which is living. The shell is like a house that the snail carries with it. It is made by the snail and is actually a part of its body. It provides protection. Later that day in school, Avadi and Ayush shared this incident with their friends. They approached the teacher to understand how a shell which is not even moving could be a body part of a living snail. The teacher initiates a discussion in the class on living and non-living. So living things have specific characteristics, and even if something appears to be non-living, it could still be a part of a living organism. The shell is a great example of this. See this picture? The children, they are trying to pick these shells. Let us record. We are surrounded by numerous things. Just look around in your classroom and you may find many examples. The pencil that you are holding, the book that you are reading, or the pigeon near the window. You can see so many things. List them in table 10.1 and identify each of them as living or non-living on the basis of your understanding in column 2. Write a reason for grouping them as living or non-living in column 3. We can do. See this table? Living beings and non-living things in our surroundings. In this table, there are 5 columns. See the name of the thing, then my guess, living or non-living, then what is the reason or remark, then correct answer, then reason or remarks for the correct answer. See first one, pencil. My guess, it is a non-living thing. Then what is the reason? It is made of wood and graphite. Then correct answer, it is a non-living thing. Reason, inanimate object, cannot grow, reproduce or respond to stimuli. Inanimate object means something that does not have life. Next one, book. Book is a non-living thing. Then reason, it is made of paper and ink. Then correct answer is non-living. Reason is again inanimate object. It cannot grow, reproduce or respond to stimuli. Then what about pigeon? Pigeon is living. Reason, it can fly, eat and lay eggs. Correct answer is also living. Then reason, it exhibits characteristics of life, movement, growth, reproduction, respiration, etc. Then car, it is a non-living thing. Reason, it is made of metal and other materials. Correct answer is also non-living. Then it is an inanimate object. It cannot grow, reproduce or respond to stimuli. Then what about plant? Plant is a living thing. It grows, needs water and produces food. Correct answer is also living. Then reason, it exhibits characteristics of life, growth, reproduction, photosynthesis, response to stimuli, etc. What sets the living apart from the non-living? Look at table 10.1. Why do you think a pencil is a non-living but a pigeon is living? What do you think are the differences between living beings and non-living things according to you? What similarities do the identified living beings share with each other? So what are the differences between living things and non-living things? You may have identified movement as one of the similarities among living beings. You have also seen cars moving on road. Does it mean that a car is living? So one of the similarities among living beings is their movement. But cars are also moving. Does it mean that a car is a living thing? List the task that you can do but a car cannot. You are a wonderful example of a living being. Whenever you attempt to group things around you as living or non-living, you can compare them with yourself. Which characteristics help you in differentiating yourself from a car? For instance, a car does not grow. Does it mean it is non-living? Now, which characteristics have you used to classify a car as non-living? Continue your discussion in a similar way to identify the essential characteristics of living beings. What are some common characteristics that make living beings very different from non-living things? Let us learn about them. So, living things can move. A car can also move, but it is not a living thing. Why? Living things grow and develop over time. A car doesn't grow, it is manufactured. Then living things can reproduce, creating more of their kind. A car cannot reproduce, it needs a factory and human intervention to be made. So, a car is a machine that can move, but it lacks the fundamental biological characteristics that define life. Can we consider movement as one of the characteristics to differentiate between the living and the non-living? List 5 things around you that can move on their own. Do you think that all 5 things that you have listed can be considered as living just because they can move on their own? However, unlike animals, plants do not move from one place to another. Do you consider them as living? See, not all living things move in obvious ways. Think about a tree. It is alive, but it does not walk around. It still moves in other ways, like growing taller, its leaves turning towards the sun, and its roots spreading. But these movements are not as noticeable as an animal walking. So, even though plants do not move from one place to another, they do show certain types of movements. Opening of flowers is one of the examples of movements in plants. Opening of flowers is an example of movement in plants. Another example of movement in plants is seen in insectivorous plants. Insectivorous plants are plants that have adapted to trap and digest insects and other small animals. They are also known as carnivorous plants. So, insectivorous plants are dependent on insects for their nutrition. Drosera is one of the examples of an insectivore. Drosera is featured with the saucer-shaped leaves, having many hair-like projections of unequal length with sticky ends. Whenever an insect enters the saucer, hairs move inward and trap the insect with their sticky ends. So, what is the speciality of Drosera plant? It is an insectivorous plant. Then, it has saucer-shaped Leaves. The leaves have many hair-like projections with sticky ends. So whenever an insect enters a saucer, hairs move inward and trap the insect with their sticky ends. Try to observe the mechanism of movement in other insectivorous plants. Then climbers. Climbers also wind themselves around any object placed close to them. That means even though plants do not move from one place to another, they do show some movements. Compare yourself with a picture of your childhood. In this picture, you can see the growth of a child. Can you wear the dress that you used to wear 4 years ago? No. Why? Because you have become larger in size. You are growing. This is due to growth in your body. Plants and other living beings also grow. Can we consider growth as a characteristic of living beings? Living beings need food or nutrition for their growth and development. So, growth is an important characteristic of living beings. To grow, living beings need food or nutrition. Now, think of a process without which we cannot live. Count the number of breaths you take per minute after a normal walk, after a run, and after a few dance steps. Record the data and observe. Do you notice any difference in the number of breaths after each situation? See, when you are doing normal work, your body's demand for energy is relatively low. So, your breathing rate will be at a resting level. But what happens after a run? Running is a vigorous activity that requires a lot of energy. To meet this demand, your body needs to take in much more oxygen. This is why your breathing rate increases significantly during and after a run. Then what about dancing? If it is slow, gentle dance, your breathing might not change much from your normal work level. However, if it is more energetic dance with loads of movement, your breathing rate will increase. Do you notice the process of breathing in other animals like dogs, cats, cows and buffaloes? Notice the movement of their abdomen while they are taking rest. In the process of breathing, when we inhale, the air moves from outside to inside our body. When we breathe out, the air moves from inside our body to outside. Breathing is part of a process called respiration. So, breathing is a part of respiration. When we inhale, the air moves from outside to inside our body. When we exhale, the air moves from inside our body to outside. Do plants also respire? There are tiny pores called stomata on the surface of leaves. These pores help plants in taking air in and out. Leaves of plants have tiny pores called stomata that allow gases to enter and exit. Oxygen from the air diffuses into the leaf through the stomata. All living beings respire. Have you noticed white patches forming on shirts around the armpits during summers? These patches are formed due to sweat. The sweat consists of water and salts removed by the body as waste products. Removal of waste products from the body is called excretion. Urine is also formed as a product of excretion in animals. So during summers, you can see white patches on shirts around the armpits. These patches are formed due to sweat. The sweat consists of water and salts. These salts and also water, they are removed by the body as waste products. Removal of waste products from the body is called excretion. Urine is also formed as a product of excretion in animals. Do you know plants also excrete? You may notice plants excrete excess water and minerals in the form of small droplets on leaves. For example, grasses and roses. All living beings excrete. So, all living beings excrete. Like animals, plants also excrete. You can see plants excrete excess water and minerals in the form of small droplets on leaves. Let us look at another characteristic. What is your reaction if you unexpectedly step on a sharp object such as a thorn? While walking without shoes, or you accidentally touch a hot cup of tea, what will happen? Stepping on a thorn and touching a hot object are stimuli. Anything or any event that prompts living beings to respond is called a stimulus. So, what is a stimulus? A stimulus is anything that can trigger a physical or behavioral change in a living organism. List 3 stimuli and your body's instant response to them. See, for example, sudden loud noise like a car horn. It is a stimulus. Then, what will be your response? You might experience a sudden jump or flinch. The next one, touching a hot surface. It is a stimulus. What is your response? Immediate withdrawal. You quickly pull your hand away from the hot surface to prevent injury. Then stimulus, bright light. It is a stimulus. Then what will be your response? Your pupils. Pupils means the black circles in the center of your eyes automatically constricts to reduce the amount of light entering your eyes. Do plants also respond to stimuli? Yes, plants also respond to stimuli. For example, touch me not, it's also called mimosa or chui mui, ledjalu. Plants fold their leaves when we touch them. When you touch the leaves of a touch me not plant, what will happen? The plants will immediately fold their leaves. Have you also observed that certain plants fold their leaves after sunset? Some plants will fold their leaves after sunset. Specifically, the leaves of a certain plants facing each other tend to come together. This can be observed in the sleeping leaves of amla or Indian gooseberry tree. So, all living beings respond to stimuli. Why do the leaves of chuimui and amla plants respond in this way? Which stimulus could be responsible for their behavior? The leaves of the touch-me-not plant fold in response to touch due to a rapid change in water pressure within the plant cells. This is a reason why the leaves of the touch-me-not plant fold in response to touch. It is due to the rapid change in water pressure within the plant cells. What is a stimulus here? The primary stimulus that triggers this response is mechanical stimulation such as touch, shaking or even wind. Then the sleeping behavior of amla or Indian gooseberry leaves where they fold or droop at night is to reduce water loss, then to protect from cold and to reduce the damage caused by wind. Have you seen young ones of cats, dogs or other animals? Of course. List young ones of 5 different animals. Have you seen young ones of any non-living things such as pencil, chair or an electric bulb? No. All living beings reproduce. Reproduction is a process of producing new ones of one's own kind. Why is reproduction necessary? It is necessary for the continuity of life. So, all living beings reproduce. Reproduction is the process of producing new ones of one's own kind. It is necessary for the continuity of life. When a living being is not able to exhibit all of the above mentioned characteristics, despite the availability of all resources like food, air, and water needed for being alive, it is said to be dead. When a living being is said to be dead, when a living being is not able to exhibit all of the above mentioned characteristics, despite the availability of all resources like food, air, and water, then it is called a dead. From the above discussion, we can understand that all living beings share some common characteristics. For example, all living beings show movement, they need food, and they grow. They also respire, reproduce, excrete, respond to stimuli, and eventually die. So, the important characteristics of living things are they show movement, they need food, they grow, they respire, they reproduce, they excrete, they respond to stimuli, and eventually die. Absence of any of these features indicates that they are non-living things. Now that you know how to identify a living being, fill up the remaining two columns of table 10.1 and complete the activity. Children, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. We will see you in the next video. Thank you.